Welcome to Diligent Canine. In this video, I'm going to do a quick follow-up on some considerations for crate training, just to add on to the video I released on Patreon about crate training and the details of how to do that. Alright, so about immediately after I finished recording the video on crate training, I thought of a handful of things that I wish I would have included in there. Not just about how to crate train your dog, but the process of doing it and some considerations, or not problems, but diversions, detours, speed bumps that you might run into. So the biggest one is probably not when to start crate training, but when in your day to do the actual training. This is very similar to like door dashing in principle, or barrier dashing, right? So the best time, or actually the worst time to train your dog when to not dart out of the door as soon as you open it is when you're about to go to work or when you need to go somewhere, and then you've got to fight and wrestle and struggle to get the dog back inside when you've got somewhere to go. And all that is going to add stress to your life, and you best believe that it is going to be transferred directly to your dog's life as well. So that translates pretty directly to crate training as well. You do not want to wait in the day until it's time for you to leave for work or for you to go somewhere. You don't want that to be the only time that you're practicing and training your dog to go peacefully into his crate and stay there. For all the same reasons I just mentioned. If you wait until it's time to go to get the dog in the crate, then you have expectations, then you have a deadline, then you have stress, then you have an emotional investment in getting that dog in the crate, which is not what you want. You want to be relatively detached from the outcome, so the dog starts to develop an intrinsic motivation to go into its crate, maybe before it's even cued. So, for example, my dog Dean knows that when I either fill his water bowl, he'll probably go and wait in his indoor crate, or if I pull his Kong out of the freezer when it's filled with peanut butter, as soon as he sees and smells that, he goes to his crate right away. That doesn't happen all the time, obviously, but it happens frequent enough where I've been reminded, yeah, this is a really smart animal that knows that it's time to go in his crate, it's time for me to leave. But these are habits that are built over time, and the way you do that, the way you develop those habits, is by practicing them not when you want to perform them, so to speak. If you think about an athlete, they spend dozens and dozens of hours honing their craft, practicing their skills before it's actually time to perform. So how that relates to crate training is that the clutch time where the dog must perform, that's the time when you need to leave. That's when the dog absolutely must do that, so you can have a smooth transition, put them in the crate, get ready to leave, and you're out the door and on your way. So when to practice then? Well, I've mentioned in other videos that using meal times and bathroom breaks are really good times to train your dog, because those are the two things that you're probably going to do more than anything else with your dog, is take them out to go to the bathroom and feed them. So you can use those meal times, again, not for 30, 40-minute long training sessions, but you ration out the dogs. If you feed them 4 scoops of food a day, or 2 scoops twice a day, 2 scoops in the bowl, and before you give them the bowl, you take a handful out and you do a few reps to train them to go into their crate. Even if you have to lure them to the crate with like a trail of breadcrumbs, you do that, get them in the crate, get them out, and do a few successful reps, and on a successful repetition of them going into the crate, and eventually, that works out really well because you have a jackpot of a couple scoops of food already ready to go. So you might just spend 2 to 5 minutes every time you feed the dog. Again, that could be 2 to 4 times a day, and you're getting really short, concentrated, effective training in that way. So you can lure the dog and then give them the jackpot of whatever is left in the bowl when the training session is over. And again, that is up to you. Somewhere between 2 to 5 minutes is a really good spot. Though again, you're wanting the dog to be successful, and you're wanting to build that success, and not sort of drive them to boredom with the activity. Dogs and people, for that matter, learn better in smaller increments. So if you're teaching a simple behavior management skill like crating, like walking out the door, things like that, then the best way to learn that is going to be broken down into somewhere between 10 2-minute sessions in a day, or maybe like 5-minute sessions, something like that. It should not be laborious. It should not feel difficult. It should seem really sweet, simple, and to the point. Something else to think about is, what do you do once your dog is already in the crate? And it's not uncommon for dogs to have some separation anxiety, or to make some noises while they're in the crate. Now, a dramatic oversimplification to solve this is to just ignore the dog. I realize that sounds way too simple, but it is most of the solution. So what needs to happen is, you need to teach the dog that whining and crying or barking in the crate will not get it out of the crate. In other words, it's your responsibility to then teach the dog that being quiet will get you what you want. Barking and whining will not get you what you want. So the finer details of this are, you can't give in to the dog's whining and crying. So if every time they start barking and whining in their crate, you immediately rush in to the room where the crate is, the garage, the basement, the bedroom, wherever you happen to have it, and then the dog stops whining. Well, you've just taught that dog that if it whines, cries, and barks long enough or loud enough, that you will come check on him and pay him attention, and that's how it can get what it wants. But you need to do the opposite. Just like getting the dog into the crate, you don't want to wait to train this when the behavior must be completed. Even if you have a busy work schedule or something, you really need to set aside time after work to practice leaving your dog alone, whether that is alone in the house, or alone in the crate, or alone in the car if you take your dog places. It's the same kind of principle, where that stuff has to be practiced. You can't just assume that, your assumption will be wrong. You can't wrongly assume that your dog will behave itself or know how to conduct itself when left alone, be that in a car or a crate for an extended period of time. So your responsibility is to find time to teach that, whether that is before work, after work, on the weekends, again, broken up into small chunks throughout the day. So what this might look like for a dog that whines or cries in its crate is, you put the crate in the garage or an isolated room. You get the dog in there, you close the crate, you close the door to the room, the dog starts to whine, cry, or bark. Okay, well, you simply have to wait. But this is part of your training, so this should not be when you're rushed to do something else. This is part of your training, so you're allowing it to take as long as it needs. And when the dog stops whining or crying, immediately you open the door, mark, reward, whether that be with food or praise or play. It is only when the dog is quiet that he gets the thing he wants. And for the purposes of training, when you're teaching this behavior, that might be when the dog is quiet. So if you come home from work, say, the dog's happy to see you, is bouncing around his crate a little bit, wagging his tail, starts barking very, very loudly. Well, I would stand in front of the crate, wait for a little bit. If the dog is quiet, then I'll start to open the crate. But if I wait a little bit, a minute or two, and the dog doesn't quiet down, then I'm gonna go about my business. I'm gonna ignore the dog and start taking my shoes off, or just doing whatever it is that I would normally do when I get home from work, and ignore the dog. But as soon as the dog is quiet, then he earns my attention. Then he gets my attention to go for me to come back over there and let him out of the crate. So again, this can be practiced periodically throughout the day. It does take patience. You do have to ignore it. You do have to suck it up and be able to train that into the dog. But again, you're practicing these skills throughout the day when it's not a critical time for the dog to perform that. So, just to summarize, you want to practice overcoming that whining and rewarding the dog, not when it whines, right? So I don't just mean food or play. Don't give it any attention when it's whining and crying, but as soon as it stops, that's the behavior you want to be reinforced. So reinforcement in this case comes in the form of being let out of the crate. So I hope that helps to maybe answer some questions or add some details to the crate or kennel training process for you and your dog. As always, thank you for subscribing and for your support of military and working dogs on patreon.com/diligentcanine.